Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I always get super excited when I see the bleachers just like absolutely packed. Makes us feel very cozy and friendly. Before I pass things on to our speaker, I just want to remind everyone that we have lots of events happening at the museum. Of course, after tonight, we will have the opening reception for Cameo, which is going to be so fun, plus the juried student show. I'm imagining lots of your works are in there. We have artworks by 34 students across NMSU, and the award ceremony will be at 6 p.m. So definitely make sure to be there for that. Um, on Saturday, we have a free workshop open to all ages where we'll be exploring identity and place and making flags inspired by some of the banners that you see on display in Necessary Futures. We still have a lot of spots to sign up. So if you want to do something fun on Saturday, then find us online and sign up pretty please. Going into April, on April 16th, we'll be hearing from Dr. Metcalf, who is going to be elaborating more and explaining the process and development of organizing. Cameo by Jamie Isenstein, and that's going to be a really informative, wonderful lecture. So I hope everyone comes back. Very soon after that, on April 21st, we'll have a conversation titled Arts and AI Discussion with artist Nicole Hebron, who I encourage everyone to look her up. Her work is so fun, where she'll be speaking in conversation with Dean Enrico Pontelli. They'll be talking about the themes that Jamie Isenstein is exploring and what's real, what's not real, what information can be trusted, how new technology can be used, and where it can be criticized. So we have lots of fun things coming up. Please remember to follow us online, stay up to date, and just keep coming back. So thank you so much for being here. And now I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Metcalf.
Hi, everybody. Most of you know me. I'm Dr. Megan Metcalf. I teach contemporary art history here at NMSU. Thank you so much for being here. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Jamie Isenstein here. I promised I wouldn't talk for too long. Jamie and I met in New York City at Columbia University, where we were both attending more than 20 years ago. It was a long time ago. I've always loved Jamie's work for a number of reasons. One, so we met through friends, but it turns out we were both really interested in performance, and we were interested in how performance inhabits gallery spaces. Yeah, so things I love about Jamie's work: it's funny, it's fun, it's also very art historical. It has a deep historical consciousness that I think is really interesting and really fun, and it keeps historical ideas alive for us in the present moment, which is really great. Um, and then, of course, as you know, later on, I got interested in institutions acquiring performance. That's what my lecture will be talking about in a few weeks, as well as the process of putting this together. The short version is that those of you who are in my museum and curatorial studies a year ago started researching Jamie's work. So this talk will elaborate on a lot of that information. I don't see too many of you here, but I know there are some people. Then we had a seminar last fall called Performance in Museums that was deeply researching both the themes of Jamie's work and helping out with some of the logistical requirements of the show. So students are involved in basically every part of this process, including now as performers. So we're all really excited to have this happen at NMSU. The end result is that the University Art Museum is collecting its first live performance work, which is really exciting. And you may or may not be talking more about how you thought about that. But yeah, the ability to do this and have students be so integrated and also to have Jamie actually come, all of this is so meaningful to me. And so thank you so much for being here. And thank you for being here. Jamie Isenstein.
Can you hear me? Do I need this? Can you hear me now?
Okay. Hang on.
Or should we've been working on this whole endeavor for so long. I have a long list of thank yous and it's not even enough. Dr. Metcalf, Megan, thank you. NMSU, UAG, Megan, Courtney, Kesley, our hero. She's there. Jasmine, Marissa, all the students from Megan's class last semester and last year, and those who will be who worked on the show and those who will be in the show, and Alfredo from facilities who okay, and then also the show is actually kind of a group show. So I want to thank all of the artists who don't even know. I don't know if they even know that their work is in the show. um, Chip Peak, Leland Rice, Liliana Porter, Mike Lawrence, and Vincent Harley Hallett. And I thought, so I'm going to apologize first because I can talk about each work for an hour. So I wrote my presentation so that I don't talk all night. And so I'm trying to act like I'm not reading it, but I'm going to definitely read it. And I wanted to explain my work with a through line that leads from my whole body of work to the gallery exhibition. And it's not exactly chronological, but it's close. And I'm going to start at the beginning and make sure to cover the themes that you'll see in the exhibition, and which are the still life genre, performative objects, including inhabited sculptures, puppets, automatons, and other objects that transform or move in some way. Also, I want to plant a seed for you to think about as we're going through my work. And because the exhibition at the gallery does not explicitly address it, but it is there, is that artificial intelligence as a topic for the work on display. I decided I wanted my apprehension, and I'm guessing yours, about the sudden ubiquity of artificial intelligence to be the backdrop of the work. AI raises epistemological questions about the nature of existence, knowledge, perception, illusion, confusions of what is real and what is fake, what is alive, what is not, what is natural and what is artificial, what does it mean to have free will and autonomy, all questions that I've been thinking about in my work since the beginning. So those of you who may recognize this work is not mine. This is Marcel Duchamp's work from 1915 called In Advance of a Broken Arm. And as Megan said, I've referenced a lot of art history. Marcel Duchamp also has a role in the exhibition, but I'm going to start with my work, with his work to explain my work. When I started this project, I was interested in when I started my whole career, I was interested in the standard regular material investigations. I was thinking about traditional materials people use to make art, like stone and bronze. And I was trying to understand why art materials expanded to include things like basketballs. I was studying Marcel Duchamp's ready-mades, which, if you need a reminder, he was the first to repurpose mass-produced objects as artworks by either signing them with a name or giving them titles and or installing them in unusual ways in exhibition spaces. This work, In Advance of a Broken Arm, is a shovel that hangs from a ceiling. Also at the time, for fun, I was researching 19th century and early 20th century pastimes, including the tableau vivant. If maybe this way. What's up? What am I doing wrong?
Just make sure.
Oh, okay. What's that? Okay, so next slide. I hate talking into microphones and now I'm talking into one. Can I step back? Does it still work? Okay. So tableau vivant, then, so if you don't know what a tableau vivant is, it's where people would pose as famous paintings for fun, like this. So this is a real woman, and that's a painting. And then maybe you've seen them like the next slide, like this. So I think this might have been a COVID project where people were making their pets into paintings. Next slide. I had realized that tableau vivants were popular only a short time before and maybe even during the time that Duchamp was making his ready-mades. And actually, they're kind of the same, a repurposing of someone else's work to make it your own. So then I thought, what if I combine ready-mades and tableau vivant? So this is Magic Fingers, which is the first of my work where I incorporated my body into a sculpture, or in this case, a painting, where I would consider my use of my body as a ready-made. I sat behind a wall with my hand in an oval frame so that when looking at the work from the gallery side, just my hand is seen in the frame. I would hold my hand in the frame in art historical gestures for hours at a time, only moving every few minutes. I even had an art history book on my lap for hand gesture inspiration. Next. So this is actually a movie of the artwork. I realized there was a problem. If this is going to function like an artwork and hang in an exhibition space, what happens when I want to go home or take a break or eat something or go home to go to sleep? Next slide. So I realized the solution was the will return sign, which you probably have seen in a shop window. I could put the sign in the frame when I wanted to take a break, and people would know when to come back. But also, this way, the artwork would still be doing something while I was gone. So the work didn't revert to being a theatrical prop, like something left on an empty stage. The sign turns a performance into a sculpture and solves a problem that performance art has, which is that it turns something time-based into an object that can be displayed in an exhibition setting. Next. So then I took this will return sign and ran with it. So here is magic lamp where my hand held one of those magic light bulbs that is like a little magic trick that you can't tell. You can't actually tell from this image, but the light bulb is lit and you can't tell how because there's no wires. And next. And then, of course, when I was not there, there was a will return sign. As a sign comes from the world of commerce and stores, it makes the labor of the work explicit, but it also allows for humans to be human. Human body can be incorporated into an object and yet stay human and fulfill human needs. The sign says, will return, but I also know that you were thinking, but wait, one day she won't return. So what happens then? So actually, the work becomes a kind of conceit or an extremely elaborate metaphor where instead of promising I will return eventually, it makes you think about how, in fact, one day I will die and I won't return. So there is a theme of ephemerality within these works where the supposed permanence of objects is contrasted with the fleetingness of human life. The work can function a bit like a vanitas or a memento mori in that way. Both are historical terms to describe works that focus on mortality. Yeah. Next work. Next slide. Yeah. I really got into the clock and I even mechanized it. This one by installing a clock in the back and removing the second hand so the minute and hour hand move imperceptibly. I hung it in the window of this joke art gallery that was just about a foot deep. And I told people to come by for a performance, but then I set the clock ahead 15 minutes. And because it was always slowly advancing, I would never have to actually show up. Next. So I've been thinking about death in the body and symbols from art history since grad school. This is Inside Out with Jamie Isenstein, which was actually my MFA thesis from Columbia in 2004. The project was a ventriloquism show for the radio, which sounds like an oxymoron, but strangely, the most popular ventriloquism show of all time, the Charlie McCarthy show, was on the radio. And in my radio show, I interviewed my skeleton and a bottle of lotion. Skeleton has a low, hollow voice. He's like, I'm skeleton. And lotion speaks like a squeak, like, Basically, the show is a discussion between me and my inside and my outside. In this episode, we discuss celebrity plastic surgery with Skeleton, who is an autograph hound. Skeleton and Lotion are the first puppets that I used in my art. So next slide. And these are their autographed headshots. And of course, Lotion's signature is a squirt of lotion. Next slide. Skeleton and I also had a vaudeville act, and here is our autographed headshot. Next slide. And this is the vaudeville act. This is a film still from a video of Skeleton and I dancing to a ragtime arrangement of the Bee Gees' Staying Alive. I built Skeleton from an animatronic store display plans. The video is played on repeat, so it infinitely loops. The idea is loosely based on the medieval art theme of the Dance of Death, but in this case, because of technology and the infinite loop button on the video player, the dance never stops. Next. So I'm sorry about the quality of that video because it was made before HD technology and I've been unable to de-interlace it because of the stripes on the pants and the cane. So it looks much better on an old-fashioned CRT TV. So one day AI will help me. So you can see in the video of me trying to mimic the robotic movements of the animatronics figure, like the 19th century legend of John Henry, who wanted to prove humans could outperform machines when he raced a steam engine to drive steel into the ground. In the story, John Henry won, but he died of exhaustion. The video became part of this installation where I had a player piano perform Staying Alive soundtrack that you just heard. And there was a small stage of red curtains where I acted as the rigger, pulling the ropes behind the curtains to make them dance. You can see my foot in the corner. I'm wearing the same outfit as in the video. Next slide. You can't see most of the time though, so it seems like the curtains are moving on their own as the music suggests, staying alive. And essentially it's you can think of the curtains like a giant puppet controlled by strings from the inside. Next. And when I took breaks, I hung a will return sign. Next. So this is armchair. I made the chair with real arms and legs and my arms and legs and sat in it for hours at a time. The work is made like a magician's apparatus. It looks like an endurance performance, but actually I'm sitting relatively comfortably in there and I listen to Moby Dick on on my book on tape. I couldn't move though, so it was a bit like sitting on an airplane. And I play with language a lot in my work. Obviously, in this work, there's a pun on the words we use to describe a chair. I've demetaphorized the chair. But actually, when we use words from our own body to describe other things that are not our own body, we're revealing our subjective, human-centered understanding of the world, how we only understand what we know through the lens of being human. So next. And then this is what it looks like without me. It collapses forward because it's missing a skeleton. And of course, it has a will return sign. Next. And the armchair was originally exhibited in a setting of other domestic themed artworks, including this work. So next. Which is a smoking pipe. It's a pipe sitting upright on a table with what appears to be smoke wafting from it. The work is referencing this painting. So next. Magritte's Treason of Images from 1929. Magritte's Treason of Images painting reminds you that a representation is not actually the thing that is depicted. So the smoking pipe sculpture is actually referring to its own illusion. Next. And which leads me back to the question of why make these works with my own body rather than make sculptures with mannequins. For example, if I was like the artist Robert Gober and I used wax leg and an arm instead of the real leg and arm, as I do in this work, which is dancing pop-up fishing sculpture, I would not be able to ask the questions of representation that the Magritte painting asks. What is real and what is representation? When you incorporate the real into a sculpture, the dividing line between art and life is blurred, which is what I think artists like Duchamp are doing when they use found objects. This work is roughly my idea of what might be a Rachel Harrison sculpture with found objects, as if I was a found object. She uses a lot of found objects in her abstract sculptures, in case you don't know. For a while, after making work that incorporated my body into sculptures, I started calling these works performatures, which is a portmanteau of performance and furniture. I realized that by incorporating objects and humans, I could create a kind of amalgamated living object. But then I realized that the juxtaposition of my own body with objects was actually the more important part, because this contrast and the complications that arise, like needing to take breaks, actually assert my humanness, which of course is always the goal. Every human wants to be treated with dignity and respect that we give ourselves because we're human. And we want people to recognize our humanity. So next. For many works, I use the will return sign because it solved those complications that arise from being human. But then I realized that I didn't have to use the will return sign at all the time. For this work, which had a life preserver that says, wishing I was fishing, or the other one, this one it was replaced with a life preserver that says gone fishing. So you can still imagine the sculpture has agency and can walk or hop away on one foot. Next. So buried in this work are questions of agency about when something or someone has the ability to make decisions for itself or not, which is actually the difference between subject and object, which is the difference between something that does something, the subject, and something that has stuff done to it, the object. Although sometimes the subject is the recipient of others' authority in the case of the king's subjects, which is confusing. In the case of my sculptures that incorporate myself or later other people, I am part of an object, but I can walk away, I can take a break. But also as part of the sculptures have a kind of autonomy that other sculptures don't have. And so this is an installation called Asafal Magic Hall, where I created the character of the headless magician as a stand-in for this autonomy. As a side note, I had been reading about the metaphor of the headless figure in the philosophical circle of the surrealist writer George Bataille in the 1930s, in which they saw the figure the headless figure as an anti-fascist ideal as fascist governments were on the rise. The headless figure could stand for a body politic that could operate without a leader, the head, as the head became increasingly dictatorial. Next. So within my body of work, there is a kind of Marvel universe of characters that seem like they shouldn't be alive, but they are. And they all rely on the suspension of disbelief, like the magician's assistant who has been sawn in half, and yet each side of her still lives. We actually know she wasn't really sawn in half because that would be murder, but we all allow ourselves to believe it anyway. I use suspension of disbelief a lot in my work, and I see it like an extended metaphor. actually, I use the iconography of stage magic and theater as metaphors for metaphors, because theatrical objects as illusions show how our understanding of the world is constructed and that there really isn't a set idea of what is true. I also like the magician figure because they pretend to be powerful, but that, like the things they want you to believe, it is all an illusion. And the headless magician takes this to the next level and is illusion that walks. It shouldn't be able to keep going, but it does. Next. And here is the headless magician has left the building and is walking around with the will return slide in place. Next. But the figure continues to do magical things. In this case, use the instrument of its own decapitation, the saw, to perform a song in a duet with animated objects that also perform a song. I like to use everyday objects as automatons, and here the fan acts like a human mouth to blow air over bottles of water. In this case, it looks like an illusion, but is based on objective reality. You can actually do that yourself if you if you try it. Next. So also another HD problem because I filmed this on bad technology. It keeps going, but we get the idea. Let's see one. It has another minute. I actually did not perform that video as a headless saw. One of the few times until recently that I did not do the work. So also in the exhibition, there was another kind of automaton. Automatons are like early robots, mechanical devices that mimic humans and animals. They were extremely popular in the 18th and 19th centuries, but we still have them in the form of cuckoo clocks or animatronic Halloween displays of like jumping skeletons. Despite that, they're just objects because they move, but because they move, they are creepy and uncanny. They start to seem a little too close to human for our own comfort. This is clap magic and another kind of automaton in the installation, although not really creepy because the technology is obvious. The lamp is plugged into a clapper, which was a kitschy sound activate switch that was sold on TV. And the video of hands on the monitor clap and the lamp turns on. So next slide. Then they clap and the lamp turns off. So there's a loop between the technology and the lamp. It's like the lamp is performing for applause. You want to turn? So this is the clapper. I haven't seen it in the store for a while, but I've heard that they still sell it. In case you don't know. Okay, next. And I thought I would like to take a quick look at some of the other automaton type works. They're still performative sculptures, but they don't involve human bodies, live human bodies. So these are books of painted eyeballs that appear to blink as the oscillating fan blows air over the pages. You want to, oh yeah, that's what it looks like from, I love using oscillating fans because they create human-like movements. And then next. And in this case, this is a work is a bird cage where the perch swings as if there's an invisible bird. Next. And this is Inside Out Winter Hat Dance, which is a pile of ice. And it was actually in the artwork that had the mechanical will return sign. There were two exhibition spaces that were shallow, and this was the other one. And it's sort of like a snowman, and it's my height, and it's made out of ice. And although snow would work if I installed it again. And in this case, I installed it in January, and the idea was that the ice would melt, and there would be a puddle that would leak onto the sidewalk. And as passerby walked through the water, it would create footprints like an invisible performer walking away. But actually, in this case, the ice melted so slowly that the water evaporated before it turned into a puddle. Next. And by March, the top hat had descended to the ground. This work is essentially a very slow disappearing act. The work probably should always be installed outside, so the changing seasons become the catalyst for the performance, but I have installed it twice inside and it was a disaster. Next. Right. And so back to magic. Another work that uses the iconography of the magician and performers. In this case, this work looks like a tailcoat on a stand, but is actually hiding a number of magic props: flowers, cards, ropes, coins, balls, and scarves. The work is literally doing a magic trick of hiding magic tricks. Next. And also I have works that imply performance, as in this work, which is self-referential. It refers to my previous performance sculptures, but actually no humans are present. There is still a suggestion that a human is supposed to be acting as the legs, but has just left. The table still stands, though, like a magic trick, and there is still a human presence in the face made by the books. Next. And then there are the more traditional performances where I'm not incorporating my body into object, as in the case of this work, which I call rug woogie, where I sit and play a harp by weaving it. So essentially, instead of making sound, I'm dampening it. Next. And then the result of the performance becomes a sculpture. Next. And in another performance where I was being myself, that's me standing very still as if I'm another wax figure in Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in Times Square. Or technically, you could say I've turned my entire body into an object. And it was tough to stand still for a long time, so I would break and completely scare people. A famous celebrity photographer owed me a favor, so he took this photo. Next. So back to work that incorporates my body into sculptures with objects. This is rug, 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 rug. I wanted to make a work that talked about deception and illusion and the problem of falling prey to our own tricks. I decided to create a work based on the Aesop fable of the wolf in sheep's clothing, where the wolf wore a sheep's skin to catch a sheep and instead was killed by the shepherd preparing for his dinner. In this work, the wolf is in sheep's clothing, but I am in the wolf's clothing, and we're all in the bear's clothing on the carpet. So actually, in this work about deception, there is a history of human civilization from caveman rug to apartment rug. Next. And of course, there's a will return sign. I thought I might mention that amazingly, all these performative sculptures were sold into private and public collections. When I made my first performative work, I was not expecting it would be an artwork that could be sold. But when I brought in the will return sign, the work changed. Now it could have an afterlife of being an object that can be sold. It is still doing something performative in that it is waiting, but now it can exist as something after I'm gone. And even before I'm dead and can still inhabit the work, there are things to figure out, like how to be in touch with the person who owns the sculpture so that they can invite me to inhabit it at their house or, you know. Next. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm interested in thinking about art made out of ephemeral materials like the human body and how to overcome challenges related to using a living body and what happens after I'm not living. Throughout my entire body of work, I'm thinking about time and time spans and lifespans. There's human time and which is short, and then geologic time, which is long, for example. And as far as we know, everything has a lifespan. And actually, even objects, which we might think of as not having a lifespan or not living, they cannot die, are designed to have lifespans. So many of the things we buy are designed to stop working, what we call planned obsolescence. And actually, our economic system depends on objects having lifespans. At the moment, anyway, we need this system to work smoothly so we can pay for our necessities and we can live. But our system only works as long as we have growth, as long as we keep buying stuff, and we don't need to have all this stuff. So we have trends, and we don't need to replace our clothes with the latest styles, but we have to accept object death so that we can live. And the irony, of course, is that all this huge waste is actually killing us. So in art, there is this entire lexicon of symbols around lifespans and the fact that we must die, especially, and this is especially present in Northern European vanitas still life paintings from the 1600s to the 1800s. In these works, you would find images of hourglass, soap bubbles, candles, mirrors, flowers on the verge of decay, or reminding people of the transitoriness of life and object. So I often use these symbols in my work, and sometimes I turn objects that are not traditional vanitas symbols into metaphors for ephemerality and transitoriness. Next. So this is Vanity Vanitas. I decided to make a series of wigs with the iconography from the Vanitas paintings. It's a play on the word vanity. One wig is made from melting candles. Another wig is made from sand, like from an hourglass. And a third wig is actually mirror. Next. I regularly use candles in my work, which come from the Vanitas vocabulary, and I see them as metaphors for the human body, the way that they can be used up. In this case, I am personifying the candle, and that is trying to stay alive. Next. So now to go back to this question of bodies on display. I was at an art residency in Milan, Italy, so I was spending time in Catholic churches and ancient science museums where I saw a lot of bodies on display as relics in the churches and in anatomy exhibits at the science museums. Before photography existed, medical students relied on anatomical wax models as teaching aids. These wax models were originally developed in northern Italy, so there were a lot of them in the area. The wax models are extremely realistic, but some of the displays are not just realistic, but are actually real, as with this display of a wax model of an eye along with an actual fragment of a skull. At times, there was a confusion for me between what was real and what was not. I spent a lot of time trying to decipher whether a cardinal lying in a glass box was a relic or made of wax, and I never figured it out. When I took this photograph of eyes, I was thinking about the French art history term trompe l'oeil, which means to fool the eye, which serves as a reminder to not always believe what you see because things are not always as they seem. Next. I decided to do a series of photographs of people looking at bodies and wax models on display. It's the first time I made art works that were not unstaged people, were of unstaged people. There was a strong contrast between the everyday people looking at the bodies they were looking at, which were presented in theatrical ways with a lot of care and decoration. And this is another science museum with medical waxes and real skeletons. Next. This photograph was taken at the Basilica of St. Anthony in Padua. Worshippers are praying before the tongue of St. Anthony. Next. This was a tourist in a Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome, photographing a fragment of St. Jerome. Next. And in order to photograph anyone in Italy, they must give their approval by signing a photo release form. This is one of them. Next. I thought it was ironic that I had to ask permission to take photographs of people photographing people who did not agree to be photographed, so I put the photo release forms on display. Next. After spending a lot of time thinking about these dead people on display, I decided I wanted to create a new performative sculpture that would put bodies on display as I do, but rather than having a kind of terminating point based on my lifespan, for the first time, I decided to pass the baton. And after I inhabited the work, the plan was for and is for another person to take over the performing. And then after that, another person would do it, hopefully indefinitely. One reason I had always used myself was besides that I wanted to tie the work to my lifespan as part of the art historical tradition of the memento mori. I didn't want to force anyone to put their body into a physically challenging position. As a will return sign with its reference to stores and capitalism makes clear, these performative sculptures are a kind of work or labor I didn't want to exploit for exploit anyone else for doing my work on my behalf. But so with this work, there would be a kind of constant turnover, kind of like a wheel, but next. Oh, wait, though, here it is. But it's a tire that has legs and is wearing roller skates. And despite all this ability to move, it is stuck on a pedestal. But next. Yet the performer can leave at any time. There would not be a will return sign. I didn't want to force anyone to return. The work would still be doing something while the performer is gone. It would still wait, but without a clock. As I mentioned before, when I incorporate human bodies with objects, I hope they assert the humanity of the humans in the objects through the juxtaposition of the objects. When you see the human body parts, we think, that's a human. We're creeped out because we aren't expected to see something alive that shouldn't be. But once we get over the surprise, we also recognize ourselves, which is important, especially now when so many things and the things we interact with online are actually bots, not human at all. It's good to recognize humans. Next. So anyway, as this work is a performance that has a kind of autonomy for the performer, I decided to think about the autonomy of the audience too. Next. So I made a video of a single hand clapping. Doesn't even need two hands. Next. The next. In another gallery in the exhibition, I made another video of the reflection of a dancer dancing in a funhouse mirror, one of those curvy mirrors you find at an amusement park where the bottom of the mirror reflects the top. So this figure is where the performative sculpture that will be in the gallery here comes into being as another one of those characters like the headless magician, a figure that moves on its own, like an object that has a subjectivity. And because of the body's bilateral symmetry, it can dance with itself. So the music from the video is a tango because it takes two to tango. So next. Yeah. It takes a second. There's arms that come in, but I'm going to move on. I decided to, let's see. I decided to create an audience for the video in this gallery Like how in the previous gallery, the video was the audience for the performance sculpture. In this room, the audience is a series of glasses positioned to watch the video. In each of these glasses, oh, wait, next. Were from a different viewing device, mirror glasses, microscope glasses, toilet paper glasses, telescope glasses. We can only understand the world through our own eyes, our own subjectivity. Next. Oh yeah, the glasses with that photograph of the worshipers facing St. Anthony. Next. And then I thought I would show you another body of photographs I made with the Funhouse mirror because of the exhibition being related to this mirror. So this was actually a different dancer. Next. Let's see. Next. And next. It was a technical challenge for me to get a crisp image, especially on the top half of the photograph, because photographing a reflection in a piece of plexiglass mirror is really difficult because the plexiglass is not a sharp lens. Next. So back to candles that I mentioned before. Candles have been used to represent many different things in my art and in art history in general, especially in the still life genre. But for this work, candles become metaphors for civilization because they are not natural. Even if they are old-fashioned, they are not the sun. They are artificial light. Throughout my work, I have played with the push and pull between artifice and nature and what is real and what is fake, and thinking about the endless infinity of time and the limits of life. I'm always thinking about how do humans fit into these dichotomies? Next. So I made this giant candle clock. The work is a circle of 12 monitors with hands lighting and extinguishing candles in a loop for 1 minute. As I was saying earlier with the spectacles, humans see everything through our own subjective experience, even clocks. Here, human movement is the mechanism that makes time. Where the previous works I was showing you thought about autonomy, here humans are acting together, affecting each other, creating society dependent on each other to make the world go round. Next. This is a video. So, I worked with the students from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga to make this work. So as I mentioned, I like to use vanitas symbols for still life paintings, and the hourglass is a vanitas symbol, which is also a timekeeping technology like the clock. So I started to think about the clock, both the will return sign clock and the regular clocks as vanitas symbols to reference humans. We already do when we say clock face or clock hand. Clocks situate humans in the universe as well because they are basically bedside models that chart the rotation of the Earth against the sun. They're little models of the universe that we live with every day, and actually they set the stage for human industry because we all agree to set our clocks at the same time so business can happen. Clocks are intermediaries between our society and our planet in the universe. Every time we see a clock, we should think about how humans are a little blip of nothingness, but we think we're everything, and we think the universe revolves around us. Next. So this is actually a video. So then I did to clocks what I did to the chair, which is I demetaphorized it by turning the face of a clock into a face. As the minute hand goes around, the clock changes expression. This work is like a puppet or an automaton. By saying face of a clock, we're anthropomorphizing it because we only understand the world through our own understanding of ourselves. No matter what we look at, we always see ourselves. Next. So a few years ago, when I worked with the University of Tennessee Chattanooga students to film them, I also filmed them yawning back and forth between videos as if their yawns were contagious across the airwave. I think of this work like as if the videos are automatons interacting. When we watch the video, we end up anthropomorphizing the monitors because they seem like they're catching yawns. The representations seem like they become real. Next. So this is a video. Next. I showed the yawning videos in an installation at a commercial art gallery in Zurich titled Home Theater. I was thinking about the ways that our private spaces have turned into our own TV sound stages. So I made a series of oil paintings that are also Zoom backdrops. I think it is obvious that this was a COVID project. Next. So instead of stock images, the images are of regular life, like a laundry basket and a shoe. Next. A clock that's always a little bit after and like work ends, like, oops, I gotta go. Next. The requisite library, but where a few of the books are strategically titled to say smart. Next. And then clouds as if you're positioned so that you seem like you're floating in the sky. And so next. So back to still life. If you're paying attention to how people sell houses, there is an aspect of the real estate industry in America called home staging, where when a house is put up for sale, the real estate agent has the homeowners remove all the belongings, and then a company brings in generic aspirational furniture so home buyers can imagine themselves living in the house. If you haven't walked through a stage home, you might have had a similar experience walking through the fake apartments at IKEA. Every object has been placed just so, chosen to be bland and devoid of individual personality. But I decided to create a puppet theater, using these typical objects that you find in a stage home and give them each a unique personality. And then my husband's a composer, and I had him write a suite of songs for each object. And also, sorry for the bad video. And the sound is played on a music box, so it gives the impression the puppet theater is actually an automaton. But when you look from the back of the cabinet, you can see the controls. So in a stage house, objects are chosen not for the unique qualities, but in order to service a billion-dollar industry. But these objects get to have their own personalities, dramas, and subjectivities. So next. This is a video. Next. There's a detail. How are we doing on time? Okay. Should I move to the work that we're okay? We'll move forward. Next. And then next I did watercolors from following real estate agents around. So next. And then Inside, Outside, Backstage of Ace, which is the final work I'm going to talk about from before the exhibition, which is a vase of flowers that is based on a still life by Odile Redon, and it has real and fake flowers in it. So the real flowers eventually reveal themselves as they wilt. And okay, next. So now we're at the exhibition that's here. At first glance, the work on the walls look like they're traditional installation of still life artworks, but you'll see that there's ropes hanging. And when we first started talking about the exhibition, I was invited to create a performative sculpture that would interact with the work from the permanent collection. So I familiarized myself and chose the still lifes. And I like the word still life because it is a combination of animate and inanimate. And of course, I've made a lot of animate and inanimate objects. They're still life, evoke life and death and nature and artifice. Next. So most of the still lifes I chose because it contains some nod to nature in some way, usually combined with at least one man-made object. This Vincent Harley Hallett watercolor combines man-made ceramic vase with and pitcher with flowers. Next. And the Mike Lawrence photograph is of an egg, which is turned into a vase for a fern. The natural material was transformed into a man-made object. Nature is turned to artifice. Next, Leland Rice's photograph of gladiolas in a vase on a stool. So in choosing the works from the collection, it seemed like it was going to be a normal show, but then you're wondering, what about those ropes? And there's a clue. So next. There is a mysterious marionette in the exhibition from the permanent collection, and in seeing the marionette strings, which I don't have a photograph here, but it might be clear that the artworks on the walls are themselves puppets. When you pull the ropes, or at least the ones you can reach, you'll see that the artworks moves up and down, and I ask you all to be gentle. Next. And the reference is this Marcel Duchamp exhibition in which he hung ropes like a cat's cradle game in which he actually had children playing ball amongst the ropes. And the ropes were so thick that it obscured the other artworks, and this angered the other artists in the show. And I'm doing something similar in that I actually took over other people's artworks and made their work my own through my intervention. But honestly, because I wanted to turn these artworks into puppets, we realized that we could not actually show the original works in many cases. So because we didn't want to damage them, so there are reproductions. So now that I've made the works into puppets and reproductions, are the works now my artworks, or are they still the other artist's works? Next, Chip Peak. Once you realize that artworks are moving, there might be a shift in your perception. These works are still lives, but they're not still. They are activated like puppets, and the visitors become puppeteers. With the moving artworks in the gallery also become a kind of fun house. Next. Another one, and next. And next. And next one. In this Liliana Porter portrait, there's the traditional still life subjects of the mirror, the egg, the water pitcher. Some books and the flower vase make an appearance in the form of a postcard. The book was a Liechtenstein artwork on the cover. The postcard looks like it comes from a museum shop. The theme is the very act of art making, of taking inspiration from other artists across time and space. So actually in this work, which is a reproduction, there is a reproduction of another artist's work too. The water picture image in the print is a sketch. Scrawled lines fill the top half, reminding us that art making is always an unfinished process. Next. And then also in the work on the back wall is a series of etchings that are made by Liliana Porter also, and they're not puppets, they're originals. The series is titled Wrinkle from 1968. These works are a series of 10 prints, each one depicting a piece of paper in stages of being crumpled into a ball. When lined up, the series resembles a timeline of film stills like an animation. Next. And also a typed interview between the poet, visual artist Emmett Williams and himself, and Et, accompanies the prints. This text refers to the artworks as still lifes of action paintings and later a still life of a dynamic process. In these prints, paper, normally the background on which an artwork is presented, becomes a subject of a still life, even as it is animated. This text ties the etching series to the other works in the exhibition by activating still lifes. In this exhibition, I and the viewer activate the artworks like puppets, and in Porter's prints, the hidden artist's hand becomes a puppet master manipulating the paper off stage. Next. And finally, in the center of the gallery is a performance sculpture, still life with flowers. The work looks like a long shirt sleeve with hands emerging from both ends. You might recognize the creature from a funhouse mirror works I showed you earlier, where the arm and hands become a double of itself. Doubling is actually a theme in the exhibition, not only with the reproductions and the double-handed sculpture. Unlike other performance sculptures I made, this one will be inhabited by many of you. And you guys become the students who will be in this work will become my double. And it's actually also the first time that I have used two people in a work. And each hand of the sculpture holds a bouquet of flowers. One side are real and the other are artificial. One side reveals it is real by being able to die. The other reveals it is representation by staying fresh forever. When no performers are in the pedestal, flowers emerge from the sleeves like the straw from a scarecrow's shirt. If you didn't know half the artworks in the exhibition were reproductions, I wonder if you would see the juxtaposition of the artificial flowers and the real flowers, and you might question the authenticity of everything in the exhibition. And actually, it's a good time to talk about artificial intelligence because AI's invaded our lives and visual culture. And now whenever we see a video on social media, we constantly ask, is it real or is it fake? And if we're not asking that question, we need to be. Here's another question. Are you familiar with the art history term trompe-l'oeil, as I mentioned before, to fool the eye, or all these AI-generated images that we can't tell if they're real or fake? Can we categorize them as trompe-l'oeil? And with artificial intelligence, and especially AI agents, we are entering a world where the puppets have begun to take on a life of their own. We're turning inanimate objects into animate ones, or are they animate? And are they starting to think for themselves? At what point is aliveness even a unique quality that separates humans from objects? And now that AI is here, can we ever separate ourselves from it? Will humans always be the source of what makes these chatbots and agents seem alive? After all, AI is only able to use input from human effort at its source. So can AI ever escape our human subjective experience, or will it always repeat and synthesize information tinged with our own biases without judgment? And so when we think about AI, we are actually asking, what does it mean to be human? What actually exactly makes us human? What separates us from objects? For one thing, we die. Do objects die? Can AI die? If we pull the plug, is AI dead? If we can't pull the plug because it's too big of a system, does that make AI alive? We are conscious of our death. Objects are not conscious of their death, or are they? Will AI be aware of its planned obsolescence? And regarding AI in this exhibition, the computer scientist and cognitive psychologist Geoffrey Hinton, known as a godfather of AI for helping to create the neural network technology at the heart of AI learning, warns that AI systems will develop human-like cognitive abilities, and they are already outsmarting us in many ways. Where once we were the puppet masters, will we become the puppets? What will happen to nature once those in control are completely artificial? When humans are gone, will we still have flowers? Actually, I think I have another image. Yeah. Where imagine the packing blanket is gone. Any questions? So much, Jamie. It's a lot of, yeah.
Okay, this is on. And this opens tomorrow. Thank you, Jamie. Does anyone have any questions?
Hello, thank you so much for being here tonight. I have a question about some of your works that have been purchased. You said that, just in case anybody wanted to invite you to come re-inhabited. Has that ever happened? Have you ever, like after a work's been purchased, come back and re-inhabited a piece? That's amazing. In gallery settings or in private collections or both?
Mostly private collections in people's houses. The work that is the oval with the hand in it, the first one that was sold was bought by somebody who was very enthusiastic, and they installed a room behind their bathroom. So you wheel out their towels, which are on a shelf on wheels, and then a seat is back there for me to get in.
Oh,
So
thank you so much.
Do you have a question?
Other questions? No? Well, I realized when I introduced you, I didn't give like a whole bunch of details about where your work's been shown. It's been shown all over the place. Jamie was in Greater New York early on. So a bunch of places in New York, also abroad, internationally, and you're in the collections. I know of the Whitney, but other private collections as well. MoMA, yeah, and a bunch of other museums, which in itself is interesting for the reason that you just asked, Abigail, how it actually works to have performance in collections, which is endlessly fascinating to me, as you know. Any other questions? Sorry.
Hi, I'm so in love with your work now. It's so amazing. My question is, how do you find that people react to your performance art because you called it portmanteau of the performance and sculpture.
Yeah. Oh, performature.
How do you find that people react to it the most? Do you think people are like, what? Or you think people are "Ugh, like performance art? Because I feel like performance art gets like this bad rap of people being like, so I just wanted to know.
Well, I am actually often not fully aware of what's happening because unless somebody takes a video and so I can sense when people are looking at me, and sometimes I can get them to scream by like twitching or something. So I know that there can be some like, you know, high energy responses. And also sometimes people look at it and they think either they think it's not real, they don't look deep enough to see that's real, or they see it's real, they think I'm pulling a trick on them and they walk away because they're mad. Or they're just like, or they're like, I get it. I know it's real. Yeah. And then, and sometimes it actually can be kind of, because my work can be kind of silly. It can be the end of the road for how people even think about the work, even though I'm thinking about it in ways that I can talk for an hour on. Other people might just think it's like a haunted house. So, yeah, so I guess I get a lot of reactions.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So from the museum perspective, when you sell these performances, are you then on the hook to perform them, or do you pad the sales contract with you must pay me to perform these?
I don't, because I did not want to, well, I don't have a contract because I didn't want to feel like I had to, because what if I gained a ton of weight and I couldn't get in it anymore? And I was like contractually obligated to do something that I couldn't physically do anymore. So I just leave it loose. And also I'm happy to do it. I have been invited to places where I won't go unless they pay me to be there, or not to do the performance, but like to travel there. So I went to Germany and got in the rugs, or I'm in in the case of exhibitions, I'm there because of the exhibition often usually an honorarium, but when they're sold, no.
It's like case by case.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm happy to do it. This work in the wheel, so the two works that can use other people, then I want to make sure that the people who get in it get paid. And so in the wheel case, it was one other woman, and it was at an art residency exhibition space, so it has never had an opportunity to like really be exhibited for a long period of time. So hopefully one day it'll get invited somewhere, and then and in this case, try to find a way to pay the performers, because exploitation is really important, that I don't want people to suffer.
Our students are being paid.
Yeah.
So, you know.
And also you can get out if you need to, if it's too painful for some, because also I learned some weird things about my own body, that I designed sculptures that I didn't know other people couldn't do. Like the bear rug, apparently I'm like super flexible, and maybe a dancer could do it. And I didn't know that I did it for 3 weeks straight as part of Manchester International Festival. And I started to have physical problems and had to see physical therapists. And that's when he said, nobody else can do this. I'm like, this is not a normal way that people sleep, you know? So, yeah, so.
What's the longest period of time you inhabited a piece, and like what's the most contorted position other than that one?
Oh, okay. So the longest time was the oval one I did at the Greater New York Show at PS1 in 2005, and that was 6 months. And I had a very accommodating boss, and because PS1 is open from noon to 5 and it's closed Tuesday and Wednesday, it's like closed in the middle of the week. And so I was able to work. I was an artist assistant, and I was able to work for that artist. And that Janine and Tony, she's also performance artist, or in her work. So she understood. She was very helpful in letting me be able to do it. So I work in the morning, go to PS1, get in the wall, do my performance, and then work full days on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then the most contorted, besides the rug one, maybe that blob, that had one leg out, because I was sitting in a thing and sitting inside the pedestal, but I had to have like one leg up and one arm like holding a life preserver. So I was sitting in a weird position for a while, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Just an odd position.
So, hi, Jamie. Just out of curiosity, throughout your art performances, has there been an occurrence where somebody got way too curious and made contact with you?
Yes, many times.
How did you react to that?
So I try to ignore it, and I have gotten paper cuts. Somebody did try to put a lighter on me. And those were a PS1 where their audience seems like they might be more less used to art spaces, where it's like such a general public space that there's a lot of people who've never been to an art museum will go there and don't know how to interact. Like most people are like, don't touch the art. But some people don't know that, or parents aren't watching their kids. And I just like kind of know that it's happening. When the woman tried to set a lighter on me, then they got a security guard after that. So, and there's video of it. So we know it happened. One time somebody put a ring on me. Sometimes people put joints in my hand, or money. And when that happens, I break the fourth wall and take it. Just because I'm mad and I deserve something. So, yeah, and I don't give it back.
Thank you.
Final questions? Thank you so much for
Oh,
your.
there was a question.
Sorry.
This is kind of a silly question, but it's just like out of curiosity because I work at a haunted house every year, and so I'm wondering if you have experience with that because the experience you're describing of people like interacting with you and they're not supposed to and doing the weirdest things, like that reminds me of being a haunted house actor.
I haven't, but that sounds fun. I think I can do that.
Thank you.
That's a good place to end on the intersection of haunted house and art and fun. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much,
you.
Jamie. And please come tomorrow to celebrate 5:30 to 7:30.